You're listening to the Final Say Radio Show, a Rappaport Media production, with your host Brett Rappaport and co-host John Rappaport.
Sean Lengell is the congressional correspondent with the Washington Examiner, and he's got a real nice piece today, FCC sacks NFL's blackout rule. Sean, it's a pleasure to have you joining John and I on the Final Say Radio Show. Thank you.
Great, thanks to be here. Good to be here.
Well, it's interesting, and I'm going to give you my take on what's going on with the NFL right now and see if you maybe, it might be a stretch or maybe you kind of agree with a little bit of what I'm saying here. But I think that there's been a long-term movement to change the name of the Washington Redskins, that there's been a hesitation, obviously, not only on the team's part but on the NFL's part. And I've noticed there seems to be a much greater emphasis by many to attack the NFL for everything that goes on. Now, this may just be a normal routine thing, reviewing FCC rules, and then they came out with this new rule that they're not going to allow the NFL to enforce these TV blackouts that they've had for many years. And that might be great, and I may even support this decision. I just find it interesting that it's happening just after all this stuff with Ray Rice and other things that have been going on. And I keep coming back to it's almost like there's a coordinated affront against the NFL until they change that name. I almost feel like if they were the Washington whatevers tomorrow, a lot of this stuff would end. What's your thought on that, Sean?
I think there might be some parallels, although I don't think they're connected. However, in the past few weeks, we actually here on Capitol Hill saw some members of Congress sort of threaten to do what they could to get rid of the blackout rule as sort of punishment for what they saw as the NFL's lax enforcement of domestic violence policies, or maybe absence of domestic violence policies. And I believe, I'm going from memory here, but I believe that there was actually no, I do. There was a couple members of Congress that had also proposed to do what they could, use their influence to get rid of the blackout rule if the Redskins didn't change their name. However, I think that was this movement to dump the blackout rule has sort of been gaining steam for several years, and it's certainly members of Congress that actually sort of have somewhat limited authority over this issue, because this is really an FCC issue. They can't tell the FCC what to do. Now they can threaten, they can yell and scream, and they can also, next time there's an FCC committee spot open up, they can block that vote in Congress. But I think it's just a lot of stuff that's hitting the NFL right now that is just sort of all the stuff is hitting at once, and I don't think a lot of it is necessarily connected.
Right. No, I agree with you. I don't think it's like but sometimes when you get that little gut feeling, like there's half truths to it. Like, say you feel like part of it is that, but also, I mean, let's face it, when you have high profile people who do stupid things and a tape gets released, well, of course, people are going to run with it. But just, coming back to the... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I will add, though, that you are right that the NFL has been a very convenient punching bag for Congress right now.
Yes.
And, the whole Ray Rice situation, as deplorable as it was, it gave members of Congress a sort of a bully pulpit to kind of bash the NFL, which maybe they were looking for an excuse to bash them anyway, and this gave them a great excuse. I don't know, but certainly in the last month or so, well, really, maybe in the last year or so, between the Redskins name and the Ray Rice issue. You've just seen congressmen just come out of the woodwork just to hammer the NFL, and I don't know if Roger Goodell is a sympathetic figure. I mean, the guy makes $40+ million a year, but you almost have to feel sorry for the guy a little bit, because he's just getting hammered on all sides, and one of those sides is certainly Capitol Hill.
Sean, since this is your first time on the show, this is John, so you'll have to get used to discerning our voices, which is a bit of a challenge. I think a lot of this actually comes down to two fairly simple factors. One, the NFL is a relatively, even though it lasts a long period of time, it's a relatively compressed game cycle with arguably the top ratings of any of our major U.S. Sporting events. And so I think there's a natural inclination to have a big mirror, reflecting upon everything that it does. I think that probably has something to do with this. And as much as it's a distraction for the American public, I think it's also, similarly probably a distraction for those in both in politics and in the news cycle who are looking for where to focus their energies.
Mm-hmm. No, yes, I would agree with that. It's like I said, it's just kind of a perfect storm right now. Things hitting the NFL. Another recent example. I mean, they just in the last day or so, a player was hit with a fine for praying in the end zone. It's just, I think they will weather this storm. I mean, they are a multi-billion-dollar industry, and I think they'll be fine. But you're right. It is really, it's probably the shortest season of any professional sport in this country, and so you're right. So when you hit NFL time, it's just, the microscope is out even more. I mean, baseball just kind of meanders forever, and hockey and basketball, soccer, same kind of thing. But yeah, you're right. It's just, and games are mostly concentrated on the weekends, and so it's just, the national focus is, even I think there's many more casual, say, NFL fans, maybe there is even, casual fans in other sports.
Right. By the way, that was Kansas City's safety. I was watching the game live last night, Hussein Abdullah, and he thought it was for a slide, he had said. It was actually because he got on his knees and to say a prayer, which of course, he has a right to do, being a Muslim. It's, whether guys are pointing to the sky or doing the Tebow one-knee drop, I mean, it's something they have a right to do. I'm glad the NFL acknowledged it before it turned into some major media hoopla. But on the issue of blackouts, I have to say, because the NFL is essentially a government-sanctioned monopoly, I think to some degree and the fans, of course, pay huge penalties, if you want to look at it that way, from a tax perspective to support these teams. I do think there is something wholly insulting about the price of tickets and the fact that fans would then be penalized from watching their home team, whose stadium they built with their tax dollars, because not enough people could afford to fill the seats, or the team was doing so poorly that they couldn't entice the people to come and fill those seats. This is one rule, actually, I really didn't have a problem with.
Yeah, and it's a rule that most, if not pretty much all, average Americans, I think, could support. I mean, in essence, this means there will be more football on free TV and sort of basic cable TV than there is right now. This will mean that things like the NFL Sunday Ticket, will be less, somewhat less meaningful. I mean, you'll still want it if you want to get those out of market games, but I'm from Tampa, and I'm a Tampa Bay Buccaneer fan, and they don't sell out very many games down there, and so it'll be nice, for the folks back in my hometown to be able to at least have a shot at watching all 16 games instead of just the 8 road games.
Yeah, that's a great point. I would make one argument. First of all, I sort of feel like the blackouts are kind of ridiculous, especially if you're paying for cable. You expect to be able to watch your local team. Mm-hmm. But I think in the rare case of a new stadium, especially suppose Tampa Bay puts up a new stadium, which they have over time, but they put out a new stadium this year. They're already having trouble bringing people in. They want to ensure that they can fill as many seats as possible, especially if the city or the state or someone else puts up a lot of money to build the stadium. So I can understand in that particular case, and maybe they should issue a waiver or something to just protect them in that particular case. But for all for a lot of these towns to continue with the blackouts, I think that's not really fair. And let's if you take a family of four, for instance, to one of these games, and then God forbid you buy a soda and a hot dog, I mean, you almost need a second mortgage for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Which why, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, the NFL, it just is a little bit different league than the other leagues. I mean, the average. Mm-hmm. I'm not even going to guess what the average ticket price is, but it's definitely more than any of the other major sports. Now, granted, there's only 8 home games, eight regular home games a year, as opposed to 81 in baseball and 40 plus in hockey and basketball. But still, I mean that doesn't necessarily give you an excuse to gouge the working man. I mean, they can gouge the working man, but it doesn't. It's just a little, and they do. But it's a little, it's just a little bit different setup in the NFL than other sports.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm sure we could talk about the NFL and football all day long if we wanted to, but I know you're pretty busy there, keeping in touch with all that's going on there in Congress. You mind if I share your Twitter handle?
Oh, absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, well, folks, if you like to follow Sean, you can find him at Sean Lengell. That's SeanLengell. And Sean's articles appear in the Washington Examiner. And, of course, we appreciate you joining us today. Sean, you're always welcome on the program, and just reach out to us. We'd have you on anytime you'd like.
Great. Thanks a lot. My pleasure.
Okay. Take care. Have a good day.
All right. Goodbye.